All right, here we go. Welcome, everyone. My name is Trapper Goldsmith, host of the TeeRap show, where we showcase elite athletes and sport individuals with their inspiring stories and rise to glory in their pursuit of everlasting greatness. Our guest today, Aaron Feltham, has been around the water polo game for a very, very long time. Age 16, he was a member of the Canadian junior national team. He spent 11 years on the senior national team. His resume includes medals at the Pan Am Games, competing at the Beijing Olympics, playing professionally in Hungary and Australia, a very decorated figure within the sport of water polo. Today, Aaron's going to talk with us about the mental and physical side of water polo, the financial struggles of an Olympic athlete, techniques he would use to maintain mental strength, and how he maintains his competitive fire after sports. So tune in, listen in. Let's dive in to the crazy world of water polo. Aaron, welcome. Glad to have you as a guest today, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Right on. So, okay, man, I'm actually excited today because I don't know a lot about water polo. And, I've done running, throwing, jumping, swinging, slap shot. I've done all that on normal ground, no water. And it can be exhausting enough, but you got to do it in water. How much harder is it when you're in the water to play an elite sport?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly one of those things where it's a bit of a foreign substance to us, and being able to battle that versus just battling the air around us, which doesn't have too much viscosity. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because you're constantly working to keep yourself above the water, but like any sport, once you're doing it and once you're comfortable in it, you don't notice those smaller details anymore. But it is interesting to see folks that aren't as comfortable in the water and see them try to hold the ball and how that kind of happens. I have a pool in my backyard, and obviously a water polo ball or two around, and throwing it to a friend and just seeing sort of how they react is always an interesting experiment around here.
Okay, so newbie question. Are you playing in deep water? Like you can't actually touch the bottom?
Absolutely, yeah. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. International rules, you're about 2.5 meters deep. And so, professionally varying pools and varying depths, but it's never advantageous for you to be standing on the bottom and be straight up and down and vertical. There's always a ready position in every sport. And so, being in a ready position versus, potentially timing a jump off the bottom is virtually, it's not worth it.
That's crazy. So are you a pretty good swimmer too then? You must be.
I mean, I was never a competitive swimmer. I wouldn't say I am a good swimmer now, but I used to swim a lot, of course. And you have to be a strong swimmer. It's wrestling in the pool and being comfortable in the water is a huge advantage, obviously.
So how'd you end up in water polo and not hockey or lacrosse or football?
It's a good question. And yeah, sort of one of the reasons why we don't have a ton of water polo athletes in Canada. But through school in grade 4, I went to we had swimming lessons, and went there and did our swimming lessons. And the instructor happened to be the water polo coach in Lindsay, Ontario, where again, hockey is the number one sport. And she just she saw me swimming, saw me comfortable, and I did natural egg beater, which instead of just, people, you get taught as a kid, usually in Canada, to do like bicycle kick for treading water, which is, just moving your feet and, like you're pedaling a bike, which is pretty inefficient, but easy to do. And then, doing egg beater, where your feet, if you imagine your feet working like an egg beater and moving around, is way more efficient, but takes a little more coordination. That's just what I did. And she invited me out, and, as they say, the rest was history. Just kept going.
I remember actually, the egg beater. I remember my swim instructor when we were in swim lessons, me and my brothers, is at a young age. She's talking about egg beater, and I'm not getting it. Like, I will admit, water is not my best friend. I learned to do the overhead stroke and not, drown. But she's talking egg beater, and I'm like, I think my legs are designed for raw land to run, and I'll focus on that. So I didn't last very long in swim lessons.
Yeah, it's another one where trying to get people again around the pool and everything, and just trying to see how people can pick it up and learn how to teach a new skill to somebody is always a challenge. But it's, if somebody can be able to do egg beater versus bicycle kick, you free up your hands. It's way more efficient.
So can you stay above the water just from doing the egg beater? You don't need your arms at all?
Oh yeah. And
Wow.
again, you've got, so in water polo, it's swimming and wrestling. And so you see people battling and working, you're holding a ball in the air. You might be sculling a little bit with your hand, but you've got people that are, 180 to 250 pounds pulling and grabbing and pushing on you, right? Like let me ask that, you're doing it with people.
Let me ask there. So hockey, you have hitting, and football, obviously tackling. So in water polo, what's a foul? What's not? You talk about wrestling. Like, what if I just hold the guy's head down and I stand on his shoulders? Foul or a clean hit?
A bit of a foul. Your easy terms are, you're allowed to do anything to somebody except for grab on their head or touch them, in the head, as long as they're holding onto the ball. As soon as they release that ball, now the call is essentially that you're stopping them from being able to play the ball, and then it's a foul if you're still holding. That's while you're holding the ball. Away from the ball, you're just not allowed to impede anybody from forward progress.
Okay. Crazy.
So grabbing onto them, pulling them back. I mean, under the water, there's lots of things that happen, but
and the ref can't see that.
Yeah, for the most part, there's speculation.
So what's training look like? Like, do you do a certain amount of dry land training? Do you do a certain amount of swim training?
Yeah, absolutely. There's both for sure. When, while we were training and getting ready for the Olympics, we would have 2 practices a day in the pool. Oftentimes, sort of 2 to 2.5 hours would be those practices. Mix of swimming, mix of, ball work, just like any sport in the field or hockey or something like that, where you're practicing your skating, your speed, and your aerobic, and then also just their tactics. And then dry land, a little bit of aerobic, but also just, weights for balance and core strength, right?
Yeah, nice. So you talked about growing the game. What's the opportunities out there for an up and coming water polo athlete? Like, is there scholarships available to them to play in post-secondary?
Yeah. So, I mean, our national team athletes do get carded. And so we were carded athletes. I'm not sure if you've spoken much about that on the show or not, but,
you can recap if you want.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there's some money that the government has set aside for, different tiers of national team athletes. And with that money, you're also able to, you get your school paid for. Now, is it a lot of money? No, it's something that helps you if you're a student athlete, or depending what you're doing, right? You're not making a whole bunch and saving, but it does help out a bit. And I mean, when we were doing it, I believe it was $1,500 a month, which is, it's hard to scrape by sometimes if you want to be able to be eating properly and just comfortable and just focusing on your sport versus, having to worry about everything else, right?
Right. So I had that kind of slotted for later in the show, but we touched on it. Like, let's kind of talk about the financial struggles for an Olympic athlete. And did you have to have dual careers, kind of your full-time career and trying to practice, train, everything on the side?
I was anything from a sandwich artist at Subway to selling sunglasses at Sunglass Hut, school, water polo, and work. And, sometimes you would do all 3 of them in one day, right? And it could be 4 hours in the pool, another 4 to 6 hours working, and then trying to catch up on your studies as well, right?
Yeah. How difficult is that? I think a lot of people, especially when you get to an elite top 4 sport, all you do is, I've often said athletes are kind of lazy, because We just want to do our sport and then shut everything down after that. But you don't get that option as an Olympic athlete, Canadian Olympic athlete, I should clarify.
Yeah, right. And so it's interesting, as an athlete to say that they're lazy. I somewhat agree to that because, you take direction from your coach, and if you're good at following that direction and your coach is pretty good, well, then you can probably find success. When you say how hard was it, I look back and it was hard for sure. And if I think about doing that now, I would think, oh my God, that's super difficult. But when you're doing it and what you want to, and you're doing what you want to do, it's just, you're trying to figure out how to make it work. Right. And so, was I tired? Sure. Could I have done some other things? Probably. But I wanted to make it work. And so in the time, it didn't really necessarily feel hard. It just felt like what I had to do to make sure that this is something that I could, try to achieve or try to get through. Right. And that's,
I think athletes have that. They have that mindset. Hey, once you're tapped in, you're focused on a goal. It's kind of like whatever I have to do to achieve that goal.
Yeah, it's periphery stuff that sure we'll have to do that as well. But I don't know. Again, if you ask me to do it now or when I talk to another athlete or somebody coming up, sure, it's difficult, and you try to help them or give some advice on how to I guess probably walk through that gauntlet a little bit. But
so what do you think, Aaron, really separates a good player? Like, what do they do well from other players to really stand out as a strong water polo player?
Yeah, I mean, there's so water polo, they say that water polo players are, second most fit athletes in sport from biathlon. So you say biathletes have to be really fit because they need to lower their blood pressure. They need to be able to focus at a time when they're not blood pressure, but their heart rate a little bit, so that they're able to focus a little bit while they're in between, in a really tough activity. And water polo is pretty similar, where you're swimming and you're fighting the water, and people can still be able to use, the mental strength. And once you get to a certain level in almost any sport, everybody's fast, everybody's strong, people have put in the work. It's the person that can still, I remember watching some players, like really great players, and they just sort of have this stoic look on their face. They might be breathing deep, but they're always just sort of have this calm look on their face. And that their heart rate's going, they're tired, their muscles are burning like the rest of us, but they're able to just keep that look on their face, which is that calm, collected look. And I'm just going to deal again with what comes to me. So that the mental capacity to be able to, block the rest of those things out and still look and see as if it was, the first play of the game when you have tons of energy, right? And those people to be able to do that in the third or fourth quarter are the ones that are special, in my opinion.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot on the show. And I relate, like David Goggins has talked about, being able to tap into that extra 20% when you feel like you're exhausted, when you feel like that's it, I'm done. You actually human beings have a lot more in the tank that very few people get to tap into, that mental side of it. I actually just watched The Last Dance recently, and it was the episode I was watching was when Jordan got food poisoning.
Yeah,
and like he's absolutely sick all night, puking, exhausted, and he just went to a different place mentally.
Remember watching that game, and like the commentators talking about how he's sick and all this stuff and what's going to happen, and just how incredible like watching that series and that game was. It was it was wild, man. Yeah, you and I are the same age, and I was glued to the TV back in the Jordan era. The guy it was pretty cool. And then when The Last Dance came out, to be able to relive that era was awesome. Yeah.
Cool, man. So what kind of techniques or strategies did you really use at that time to increase your mental capacity or raise your mental game in your sport?
I mean, there was lots of things. Some I think were conscious and some were subconscious. But one of the things when we were just talking, I kind of remembered there was, the difference of that person be able to tap into the extra 20%. And it's actually something that I find hard to do now that I don't have that direct competition. But where in swim sets and stuff, I remember being in that swim set, being tired, and like in my head, just always thinking like, the difference between me and the other person or the person that I'm training against is that right now I can still push myself and I can still go harder. Everybody else is dying. And I could imagine this thing in my head where other people would be exhausted and like their stroke is like falling off. They're not able to be efficient. They're not kicking properly. And they're just like that fighting through the water. But I'm like, this is the difference. This right here is the difference. And it's like, imagining that being in the fourth quarter, I think that was something that would play with me in the games too, where I would see somebody, you see a little bit of weakness and you're able to then, drive off of that and push yourself a little bit. There's just, so in training to be able to help myself get more fit, that was one of the things that certainly helped me. Outside the pool, I was, people always say that they're a student of the sport. I mean, I was thinking about it often. Let's just say that. Like I would imagine shots. I would imagine things that I could do better, and how I was going to try to do that in the next practice or in the next game. And I think that type of mentality versus just checking the time card and leaving the pool and then coming back and checking it again, I think is a big difference between those who are there sort of as a spectator or as a participant versus those who really want to take it to the next level.
Right. Yeah. I think that the athlete mindset is just, whether it's sport or not, you've tapped into a different part of the brain where even my wife now will get annoyed when she knows I'm focused on work and I'm focused on, my goals in my business as well. And it's just a natural instinct, right? It don't, that we kind of hyper focused, I guess you could call it, on your goals.
That's right. And it is a skill to try to dial yourself out of that too, right? And be able to stop,
shut it
work
off
and everything too, and be able to, be there for your kids and hang out a little bit too.
Yeah. One thing I've learned is wives hate to be second to anything.
That's fair. Yeah. Well, so do you.
Yeah. So what about the physical side? Like, what did your day-to-day training while trying to work at Subway and maintain financial stability, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, again, my life moving to Calgary in 2001, I guess 2001 September, renting a place, getting into school. My school was, I did it sort of 2 to 4 classes. I wasn't a full-time student, like 6 or more classes, or 4 to 6 classes. And then, wake up in the morning, take the bus to Talisman Center or now Rexall Place in Calgary, spend my 2 to 3 hours there, oftentimes then to work for a couple hours or to school, and then back to the pool for another 2 to 3 hours sometimes. In between that, trying to find some nutrition and fuel yourself a little bit.
Fit it in when you can. Yeah,
that's right. Versus that's sort of, I think, a big thing with the Canadian sport world, where it's Canada, which is fine. We've got lots of other opportunities, which is the beautiful thing about this country. It doesn't have to be sports.
100%.
We're not like, this isn't our only ticket out, which is a great thing in the country. But as you try to dedicate yourself to it, you don't necessarily have we didn't have in our situation the extra attention to the nutrition and the extra attention to outside training, and there's physio provided as well, which was super helpful. But trying to squeeze that in between classes, exams, and work was a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, sports progressive. It will always be like that. But it's really, technology aside, it's our education on understanding, better diet, better training. I grew up racing motocross in the 90s, and back then, like the top motocross guys, Jeremy McGrath and those guys, they'd race on the weekend and then they're having beers kind of
Right.
after that, right? Like it was pretty casual, and then as sport just continues to progress,
That's right.
it becomes more competitive like that.
Yeah.
So you went to Hungary and Australia. Was that opportunity? Was that to make more money over there? What strikes that move?
Yeah, I mean, I found out when at one point, like, don't remember exactly when it was, but that, you could potentially play professional water polo. And it's like, okay, well, that's something that I want to do. And so it wasn't, I've chased a lot of passion in my life as far as, those goals of becoming Olympian, becoming a, professional athlete in water polo. And then other things outside of sport as well, where it hasn't always been money driven. It's been lifestyle. And it has been, experiential for a lot of my life, which is good, I think. But it wasn't chasing money in water polo. Now there's a little bit more for sure. And had I played for longer, there could have been some more benefit to it. But Australia, it was just an opportunity to keep building on my craft and wanting to play professionally. We are in a national training center in Canada where we train for 2 to 3, 4 months, and then we get to go away for 1 to 2 weeks of a training camp or a tournament. And you practice so long on all these drills. And I always say, like, in that environment, it's great. You learn and you become more fit, but you're practicing against the same people. And then when you get to this training camp where you're training against other people who are probably playing a lot more than you, or to this tournament, and you're in the first game and you see there's an opportunity and your coach has to remind you, like, hey, that was something that we practiced. Like, okay, now I remember that. The next time you see the opportunity, but you don't react on it. And then the following time you see the opportunity, you try it, but it doesn't quite work out. And like, it continues to build like this. And that's where the game and the experience, like, that's how you actually really develop as a player. And I just wanted to be able to take everything that I learned from the training camp, from our coaches, and use it in games against new people every week. And that's where I was able to, take myself to the next level. So Australia it's a semi-pro league. There's not very much money there, but I get to basically live an entire year of summer because I was in Canada in the summer and then Australia during our winter. And it was neat because we had world championships there at the time. So it was in Melbourne where I was playing. So it was almost like a home pool for that world championships.
Nice.
And it was just a great opportunity to train with other people and again then play against a bunch of new people. And Hungary was one where they, I got a call to join a team, and I kind of jumped at it. I had probably, I can't remember what year it was. I think it was 2006 or something. We were in Budapest and I watched my first professional water polo game. It was against Juk Dubrovnik and Vasas, which is a Budapest team. So two top 8 teams in the world at that time. And there's all these fans cheering and the players were coming in. And I sat there and watched everybody and watched the spectacle. And like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to play against these guys. I want to play, in this pool. And Vasas ended up being our like number 1 competitor, like rival. We fought them for 1-2 in the league for the all 4 years that I was there. And playing in that pool, like my first year there, I played finals there. We lost sort of in the last second, unfortunately, in game 4 of a 5-game series. But just like, it was crazy. There was so many people. People were like, they're hanging over the sides in the pool. Like, and you imagine a pool, like there's not a ton that are stadium size. And this pool, it's actually got a retractable roof, and like the fans are 2 or 3 meters from the pool's edge. And they're banging drums, they're yelling, screaming, and
and you're like, is this a hockey game or a water polo game?
Totally.
What's going
people
on
with
here?
Their shirts off, they're painted, like, it's just everybody, like all the fans, people come up from our town and they're cheering. And yeah, every once in a while, just, you'd be playing and then you go sit on the bench for a second, look around and just see all this happening. And it was pretty neat to be a part of.
And that was when you played in Hungary?
That's right.
And so how long did you play there?
4 years. Yeah, 4 seasons.
Nice. And
Yeah,
but while still competing on the Canadian national team.
that's right. Yeah. So
So
the
yeah, go
season
ahead.
goes in Hungary from about September until April, May, and then off season I'd be with the national team during the summer.
So I know you became a captain for the national team. Was that kind of when you felt your game really start to elevate? Was when you started playing professionally over there?
Yeah, it made a big difference for sure. Yeah, and it was sort of my last couple of years as the captain. But yeah, just being able to play and being able to sort of put other things to the side where I wasn't working and I wasn't going to school during that time. I was just playing. I was taking care of myself a little bit differently, and then focusing on the next game, which just preparing for that game and watching some tape, and it made a big difference.
And looking back on it now, like, did you ever think you'd accomplish what you've accomplished, that you've gone as far as you have in the sport?
Yeah, I mean, you always dream of things, and I dreamed of being a part of the Canadian team to first make the Olympics by winning a game, and that was a dream. I think I had pretty lofty goals. So
Did you? Yeah.
I look back and I'm happy that we achieved some of the things we did. There's still things that wish that we would have been able to accomplish as well. So yeah, I'm surprised by it. I'm humbled by it, and it's fun meeting up with buddies and talking about the things we went through and having those great relationships. But part of me wants to have done more, but looking back at it, yeah, I'm proud of the successes that we had as teams.
So what do you miss most?
Yeah, the people. It's the guys
Yeah.
on the team. Yeah, the travel's fun, but like yeah, all the guys. We had a great group of people to train with. You spend so much time with them, and it's amazing in sport. You're spending days and hours and weeks with these same people, and then one of you retires and they're on the other side of the country, and you could potentially not see them for the next 5 to 10 years. Just
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
not because you don't like each other or any of that stuff. It's just life moves on. Yeah, and it's that camaraderie that I love the most.
I ask a lot of athletes that same question, and it's always pretty much the same answer. Like it's the locker room, it's the camaraderie, it's the guys. It's not the 24/7 nutrition plan, the working out 3 times a day. Definitely not that.
Yeah. Although if I could find 3 hours a day to dedicate to that,
Right. Yeah, we can fit it in. So how do you think you feed the competitive side now, Aaron?
Yeah, it's at work for me. Yeah, I finally feel like I've found a work environment now where it is like a high performance environment where we push each other, and I do have that camaraderie, and the people that I work with are really great people. I've had a couple of jobs since stopping, and certainly those jobs I've had a little bit of that and had a lot of fun, but now I really feel like in a place where that drive and that competitiveness it does come out a little bit more, and wanting to be the best is something that we live by, and that's where it really actually, yeah, that's where it lives right now. I did a half marathon last year, and again, my for me to be able to get up, like I kind of need somebody that I know I don't want to lose to, and I had a buddy that was doing it as well, and so that was my drive to get up and go run and do stuff. And this year I've signed up again, but I don't have somebody alongside me doing it, so I'm having a harder time pushing myself.
Right.
Yeah,
there's got to be something on the line for it.
Yeah, there's a bit of that for me. I thought I didn't think that it was there actually while I was an athlete. Like, oh no, you know what? I'll keep working it. I'll keep doing everything. Once I'm done, and Unfortunately, I stopped because of an injury, and it was in my shoulder, and my shoulder's still not great. So I think that definitely holds me back because I can't do the things that I would really want to be doing if I was working out. But yeah, I need those people. I need to think about playing against the Americans or playing against, these other teams and people there that I know I'm going to be posting up against, and not wanting to be weaker than them.
So who won, you or your buddy?
He beat me.
Oh,
my caveat is that he'd been doing it for he's been running for 3 or 4 years, and I started in February and ran in May. So I was happy that I completed it, and I had my personal goals as well. I just didn't want to look, I didn't want to finish too far behind him.
Want him to wipe the floor with you.
That's right. Yeah, I had to be respectable.
So you kind of touched on it a little bit there, I think, but what was the moment when you were like, "Hey, it's time to hang up"? We don't wear shoes, but time to hang up the helmet. You guys wear it's like water helmets, hey?
Yeah, we got a cap. Yeah, so those protect you from bursting your eardrum in the pool, which can be pretty dangerous as far as being disorientated, but also just a ball or an elbow in the eardrum is
right.
Pretty quickly burst your eardrum. So hanging up my Speedo. So I always played and wanted to continue to play. I just told myself that as long as I think I'm getting better and can continue to get better, I'm going to keep doing this. If there's still more for me to do, then I'm going to keep playing, right? Because people put like an age on it, like, oh my, you talk to buddies, oh, you're still playing water polo? Like, absolutely. And when I look back on it, like, to just keep playing sport it's great, right? Like if you're in it and you're having fun still. Well, I hurt my shoulder actually my last season in Hungary, and ended up getting surgery and tried to bounce back from that. It just didn't really take as well as I wanted it to, or as potentially could have. Had a second surgery and was sort of just like, there's no way, and even before that, in my recovery, I wasn't the same person in the pool from and I was fighting through some pain, and my shot was different. It just wasn't quite there. I wasn't able to do the things I was able to do the year or two before, and then I sort of knew that was it. It was my last kind of kick of the can, and so that's what kind of drove me to it. I would have liked to have continued on for probably one more quarter, or one more quad, like 4 more years. It would have been great.
Yeah,
but injury was, that's
the deciding factor.
Way it goes, I guess.
Yeah. What do you think your weaknesses were as a player? What were things you struggled with, had to work on?
Yeah, so there was times when, and I worked on it a lot, sort of the last few years of my career. One of them was just, kind of like a harder, faster mentality, where if you make a mistake, well, I'll just fight through and keep going and pushing. Right. And then that tends to spiral into a second mistake and a third one. Being able to, it was a challenge for me to slow myself down, be able to reset, and then and keep going without kind of spiraling a little bit. So mistakes are fine. Mistakes are fine in business. Mistakes are fine in sports. It's just making the same mistake over and over again, or having that trigger other mistakes, is when it's a problem, right?
Yeah, you have to be able to hit the reset button very quickly.
That's right. Yeah.
In golf, it's almost like in action sports, you can, it's almost you're reacting. So things are just happening. You have adrenaline going. But golf, you hit a bad shot, and then you got 5-10 minutes before you walk to your ball to think about that bad shot. And definitely, I can relate to that. That was one of the hardest parts, was not being able to, to be able to hit that reset button and continue after a bad shot, or even a bad tournament, right? We start as athletes start getting in our own head.
And I bet for yourself, it's that that time could be a benefit to you, or it could be a total drag on you, depending on where your headspace is at from a confidence level too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what's the next big dream Aaron Feltham's working towards?
It's a good question. eventual retirement and fishing all over the world. I mean, my outside of the pool and outside of work passion is fly fishing.
Oh, amazing.
Currently, I mean, I think my next big thing is for our company to double in size. Right, like the existing work that we have is, you know, outside of family life. I have two wonderful daughters, and yeah, there's, you know, watch them grow up, and all of that stuff is there from a personal and work, is to try to see and have our company actually, you know, double in size from what it is now, and be able to sit back and say, well, that was a bit of a ride, and you know, we did it, and spend some time with the people that within the company that have facilitated and worked on it.
So you talked about that, like the culture and the competitive side with the company you're with now. What does your company do now?
We're a telecommunications infrastructure company. So we have technicians that go out and work on telecommunications plants. So laying fiber optic cable, putting it together and splicing it. And we help companies also uplift their plant as well, or get it ready to be able to offer better services to the customers.
Speeding up the world of internet
a little bit. Yeah, that's right. It's I guess helping facilitate more Zoom calls.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Did you grow up fishing the bow then?
Yeah, so I'm from Ontario originally, so I grew up fishing, you know, rivers and stuff in Lindsay, Ontario. But then when I went out there, that was my reset button outside of the pool, actually, and where I did some thinking about water polo, but also just turned my mind off. You know, a lot of guys would go home and sort of rest. I would rest as well, but they'd sort of spend days in the house watching movies and stuff. And my reset button was to get out into the mountains and go walk a river and look for some fish, wondering what they're up to. And so that was my thing for sure. And coming back from a day of that, definitely got me back into the groove if I was ever out of it.
Yeah, fly fishing is one of my favorites for sure. And the bow is like next level fly fishing.
Yeah, absolutely. I do miss that part of Calgary, not living there anymore. I spend a lot of hours on that river, and I'd like to get back when I can.
They say it's the only place in the world that you can stay in a 5-star hotel and walk and get some of the world-class fishing.
Yeah, it's definitely one of them for sure. Yeah.
When you went overseas, did you fish?
Yeah. When I lived in Hungary, I went down to Slovenia and explored that country a little bit and did some fishing. It's a stunning place as well, and beautiful rivers, amazing. And pretty cool culture. And when we would go, there'd be some times when I could, you know, extend a trip and spend a couple of days somewhere if I wanted to, or as an athlete, you'd have a bit of time off in the summer, and I'd always find somewhere to be. And one of my previous roles was running a fly fishing and outfitting company in Calgary. So I spent a lot of time, exploring the rivers.
Very cool. Yeah. Right on, man. Well, this was informative for me as a newbie water polo. I told you water was not my best friend growing up, so I appreciate your time jumping on the show with us. We'll jump off live here and wrap up, but I just want to commend you, man, on your career. You've had an incredible career and your accomplishments, and continue to push and chase towards your dreams even after sport is awesome. So we appreciate you sharing some insight into the mental and physical side of the game and teaching us newbies about the game of water polo.
Yeah, thanks for having a platform for us to talk about it and sharing the stories.
Love it.